Objectives for today: to solve mixture problems. The learning targets are still the same, proportions and percents. Example number 1. If a 600-liter mixture of water and acid contains 5% acid, what is the new percent of acid if you add 150 liters of water? Step 1 is to start with finding the amount of acid in liters. If your total mixture is 600 liters and you have 0.05 of that that's going to be acid, multiply the two together to figure out what it is. This will give us 30, and that is 30 liters of acid. Now we're going to add 150 liters of water. We started with 600 liters of water and acid combined. We're adding 150 liters of water, which means the new total will be 750 liters. If you have 30 liters of acid and your new mixture has 750 liters in it altogether, you divide the two of those to figure out what the percent of acid is. This comes out to be 0.04. You must multiply 0.04 by 100 to come up with 4%. Another example. An 800-liter mixture of water and acid contains 12% acid. If 200 liters of water is added, then what is the new percent of acid? You start with 800 liters of a total mixture, but 12% of it is acid, so you multiply it by 0.12 to find out how much acid you have. That would be 96 liters of acid. We started with 800 liters in our mixture. We have added 200 liters of water. That makes our new total 1,000 liters for the mixture. To figure out what the new percent of acid is, you divide the amount of acid you have by the total mixture. 96 divided by 1,000 is 0.096. You must multiply that by 100 to figure out what the actual percent is. That is 9.6. You should round it to the nearest percent. 9.6 rounded is 10%. A practice problem. A 325-liter mixture of water and acid contains 11% acid. If 100 liters of water is added, then what is the new percent of acid? The solution for the practice problem is to start with 325 and multiply it by 0.11. That will give you the amount of acid you have in liters. 35.75 liters of acid. Now we're adding 100 liters of water to the mixture of 325 liters. That will give us 425 liters total. Divide 3575, which is your acid, by the new total to come up with the percent. When you do that, you should have 0.0841 and some change. Multiply that, should be a 0 here, multiply that by 100 to come out with the actual percent, which is 8.41 and some change. But you must round to the nearest percent, which is 8%. Another example. 800-liter mixture of water and acid contains 9% acid. How much water must be added to obtain 7% acid? You start out with 800 and multiply it by 0.09 to figure out how much acid you have in terms of liters. That would be 72 liters of acid. Now we must figure out how much water must be added to obtain 7%. Alright, if you have 72 liters of acid, but you don't know what the new total is, but you do know that it's 7% of that new total, you set your 72 over x equal to 7 over 100, which is the equivalent of 7%. And then cross multiply to get 7x equals 7,200. Divide 7,200 by 7, and that will give you 1028.571429. Leave that in your calculator, because what you're going to do with it is to subtract your beginning amount, which is 800. If you subtract 800, you should come back with 228.571429. But in this case, I'm telling you to round to the nearest liter. If you have to round to the nearest liter, it's going to be 229 liters. Example. You start out with 750 liters of a mixture of water and acid, and it contains 12% acid. How much water must be added to obtain 9% acid? You multiply your total amount by the 0.12. 75, or actually 750, times 0.12 is 90. Now, we know that this 90 is going to represent 9% of the new total, but we don't know what that total is. But in theory, if I divided 90 by the new total, which we don't know, then I should get 9%. 9 over 100. Cross multiply to get 9x equals 9,000. And divide 9,000 by 9 to get an answer of 1,000. Now that represents the new total. But what we started with was 750. By subtracting, you can figure out how much water was added. And in this case, it would be 250 liters of water. Another practice problem. A 675 liter mixture of water and acid contains 14% acid. How much water must be added to obtain 8% acid? The solution for this problem is to start with the 675 liter total and multiply it by 0.14, which is the percent of acid. When you do that multiplication, you come up with 94.5. Next, we know that the new percent of acid will be 8. This will now be 8% of the new total, but we don't know the new total. So that's over x, but it will be 8%. Now cross multiply. 8x equals 9450. Divide 9450 by 8. When you do that, you should get an answer of 1181.25. Now 1181.25 is your new total, but the original total was 675. So you must do that subtraction to find out how much water was added. That comes out to be 506.25, but you are rounding to the nearest liter. So it is 506 liters of water. Another practice problem. A 1,200 liter mixture of water and acid contains 6% acid. How much water must be added to obtain 2% acid? The solution is to start with the 1,200 liters total and multiply it by the 0.06, which is the decimal form of 6%, represents the acid. That will give us a total of 72 liters of acid. Now that 72 liters of acid will be 2% of the new total, but we don't know what that new total is. Cross multiply to get 2x equals 7,200. Divide 7,200 by 2 to get an answer of 3,600. That 3,600 must have the 1,200 that you started with subtracted from it to get 2,400 liters of water. Or not water, but yes, that should be the water that you add to it. Another example. A mixture contains water and acid. The mixture has 7% acid. If adding 400 liters of water makes the acid 5%, then how much was the total mixture in the beginning? As with the other problems, you start by multiplying the total of the original mixture by the percent of acid. But we don't know the original total, so we make it x. But we still multiply it by 0.07 and make a note that this stands for acid in liters. Now we want to find out what the new total is. Well, the old one was x. We don't know it. But if we add 400 liters of water to it, that will give us our new total. Now, as before, to find out what the percent is in the previous cases, you would divide 0.07 x by x plus 400. Remember, this stands for acid on top, and this is the new total on the bottom. That's the same thing we did before, except now we don't know something in the top and the bottom. You still set it equal to the new percent, which is 5. So that's 5 over 100. From there, you would cross multiply. And when you cross multiply this way, you end up with 7x. When you cross multiply this way, it's 5 times x and then 5 times 400. We'll finish this one up here. Move the 5x to the left and change the operation. Keep the 2,000 on the right. 7x minus 5x is 2x. Divide 2,000 by 2 to get the answer of 1,000 for x. And x represents the total mixture at the beginning, and that's what we were solving for. So 1,000 liters will be the answer.